All right, this is Lewis,
This is Brian.
and this is Small Changes, Big Consequences. This is a little podcast we put together. We're going to be talking about youth development, and especially about a book that I've actually stumbled across. It's called The Playmaker's Advantage, and it's by Daniel Peterson. It's basically, to get to the gist of the whole book, it's a book about cognitive development in youth sports, how we can implement it, how we define a playmaker, how do we define cognitive development in sports, and how we can go from here on and about. One paragraph that really stands out for me inside the book really kind of talks about the new system that a lot of these youth sports are kind of taking, the new direction, and it really stood out to me. And I'm just going to read a little bit about it, and we're going to just kick off from there.
Sounds good to me.
So the paragraph goes like this. So in 2010, Martell and his USA hockey peers created the American Development Model, ADM, a 7-stage long-term player development plan that identifies goals at each age level. Based on the adage of play, love, and excel, the model builds on a progression of participation for all, learning to love the game, then beginning to compete. But the emphasis on games, tournaments, and winning doesn't begin until later, with no goalies or competitive games until age 9. Playing or loving the sport must come before excelling at it. Now, that paragraph really stood out to me, and I think there's much that you can really talk about it. So I'm going to kind of start with you, Brian. What do you think about that?
Well, for me, I like the idea. It's great because it does get kids to enjoy the sport before kind of being forced into it, because you have a lot of, for lack of a better term, helicopter parents that will come in and just try to push their kids into a sport and try to force them into it, and it takes the joy out of it. They burn out of it, and then nobody wants to do the sport anymore. It just kind of dies out. We used to have a youth hockey team around here, and because there were so many parents trying to push their kids into it and the injuries that were coming from it, kids just left. Nobody wanted to do it anymore. But at the same time, I can also see some of the backlash that comes from this, because you have, oh, well, little kids are just playing and they're getting a participation prize rather than he won, he lost.
You know, I like to kind of follow through with that participation thing. I think the whole kind of purpose of the development model isn't about participation trophies. I don't think that development model enforces the participation trophies. I don't think that's the whole gist of it. I think the whole purpose of the ADM, the whole kind of American developmental model, is to kind of give the sport growth and retention. And I actually enjoy it. There's a lot of times where, let's say, and me coming from a Hispanic family, where Hispanic families are predominantly either into baseball or soccer. We're not really into football, and we're not really into basketball. So let's say my Hispanic family was predominantly into soccer. Let's say my parents got me, they put me into the soccer team, and they pushed me so hard that I kind of lost interest in it. And they kept pushing me, because, they wanted me to be some type of soccer star. And at the end, I think that sports specialization, just kind of pushing your kid into one sport, into just, I'm trying to get my kid into college, or I'm trying to get my kid into some really elite program where he'll make it as a professional. And then it doesn't work out, and then your kid is, at the end of the day, they didn't work out in college, they didn't work out professionally, and you're just sitting there standing kind of I never really tried anything else. I think the ADM model is kind of really good for overall all sports, because I think it enforces the fun. Because at the end of the day, the sports is supposed to be fun. I mean, professional sports aren't really that much fun because it's really competitive. It's a week-by-week basis where you're trying to win, you're not trying to lose. But for youth sports, it should be fun. And a lot of times, kids don't have fun anymore. They don't want to go because they don't want to be under that pressure or the scrutiny of having to face their parents after they lose a game, or they face their parents if they made a bad pass or made bad tackle, etc. like that. So I don't think the whole model is for participation trophies. It's not trying to be a feel-good moment so everyone can feel involved. I think it's more as in everyone to stay involved and to retain these people to be in these programs.
I think keeping these people in the sports would be very fundamental because, not only does sports participation increase throughout time, or stay the same, but the fact that you maintain people in it, and not only do you maintain it, but you increase the number of people, you increase your whole pool of potential athletes that could provide to your pro teams, to your college teams, even to your national teams, and that's always a plus. I think increasing the further development of how we develop is great. We have a really competitive country. You can look at how competitive we are when you see anything Team USA playing in the Olympics, anything, you will have support behind it. Many other times, the women's teams in other countries don't get as much support as the men and the women's team in USA gets. And that's just really interesting. I think the fact that we're progressing from that physical era in which we focus so much on the physical aspect, on the physical development of things, and we're focusing more on the cognitive side, just says a lot of how sport is evolving nowadays. I think one clear example is, I know it's out of left field, but you could say Jose Altuve. Jose Altuve really isn't your typical baseball player physique. He's short, stubby, doesn't really have that. Looks like he has the power to swing what he does, but he does. I think it comes from that increase in the cognitive side of, picking what you're gonna, picking your right pitches, making sure that you know what you're batting at. You're not just batting like any other hacker. You're not just hacking at any ball that they're sending you. You're being very smart. You're analyzing data. You're making sure that the development side. I know that's far off, but it's these type of things that go down into baseball, and they're teaching these kids, don't just swing at anything. Swing at something. Swing at something that you know you'll be able to hit. Swing at something that you know you'll be able to hit, and send it where you need to send it. I think the fact that this country is so competitive could either lead you to be a success or a failure in sports. I feel like, it sounds stupid to say, but Talladega Nights, if you're not first, you're last. And I think that's saying, I know it's a comedy movie, but it's kind of the mentality we have here in America. If you're not first, then what's the point of you doing the sport? What's the point of you even trying? I think it defeats the whole purpose of the sport, which is to have fun. The ADM, it's just kind of like a progression thing. They want you to keep inside the sport. They want you to have fun. And as you progress through age, they kind of increase the whole cognitive side of it. So they try to teach you the motor skills. They try to teach you, okay, so why are you making this pass? How are you making this pass? When are you making this pass? And what pass are you doing? I think it's not just doing to do. They want you to have a reasoning behind it. And that's just going to be really increasing. And you can see the results of the ADM model. The fact that, a lot of popular sports like soccer, baseball, football, etc. don't have the ADM model. You could see it in a drop in numbers and participation. And just throw you a quick numbers. According to 2015 Sports and Fitness Industry Association, total participation in youth sports declined from 50.2 million to 45.7 million kids, 9% decline. We're talking about 5 million kids that just quit sports, and that's really interesting because we're at a time where sports is such a big part of our community, yet it's just not having that impact. You could say there's just other circumstances to kind of play in part with that, but hey, if the sports industry was great and then the youth sports industry isn't great, that just tells you a lot of what's happening in our society right now. So another quick number, Track and field were down 10.4%. Wrestling dropped a whopping 41.9%. Let's see. Another numbers that we can throw up in there is the increase in beach volleyball. And they jumped up 22.6. Lacrosse soared by 28.8. Ice hockey exploded by 43% in the same 5 years. Even rugby doubled its U.S. youth players from 150 to 300,000. And it's just, it's a small number of participants to kind of judge it upon. But these sports that actually increase use the ADM model. They're retaining people, they're attracting people again, they're using different methodology. Why? Because they want to increase the way they do sports. They want to improve it. Let's see. Unfortunately, this isn't something that you can really sell to people. It's not an idea. A lot of people say, oh, well, no goalies or no winning associated with participation trophies. Like, I don't want my child to grow as and anything he'll win. No. Don't get it wrong. This isn't about winning or losing. This is about growing. I think we confuse too much as not winning as to not growing. That's not true. And with this process, the youth development people, youth development participants will grow better. I think you can win all your games, but you will not grow. And you can lose all your games, and you will grow. And there's been many times, and I've seen it firsthand, where youth sports is just basically a really great chance for parents to take their kids and just win and try to win at any cost possible. There was actually one time where the parents were bribing their kids and telling them, hey, if for every goal you score, I'll give you $10. And the kid was not trying to improve anything but his scoring ability. And at the end of the day, you could see his limited ability. He couldn't do this, he couldn't do that, he couldn't do this, but he could score. And I'm not sure how this kid went on to develop, but I think those negative incentives just are really detrimental to the development of a child's talent. I think we see these well-intentioned coaches in youth sports will say, well, we ran the drills like this in high school, so it should work. No, man, it's not just gonna work. It's not gonna work. Would you teach calculus to a third grader? No, absolutely not. The way that you want to do it is a logical progression with just the development of an athlete. So if he's learning his motor skills, logically go into motor skills development, run, jump, skip, hop, do all these things so your body can kind of get that cognitive connection between the physical aspect and the mental aspect. Then you progress. You throw, you catch, you kick, you control, you dribble, and then from there you move on. A lot of times that we get these kids in youth sports, we just don't know how to develop accordingly. We're either moving too slow or we're moving too fast. I think the ADM is perfect to moving these kids at a really great pace. And not only will the ADM benefit the youth development system in America, it'll also improve the health in America. Many times people just are not physically active. That's why America is one of the most obese countries in the world. We're not very physically active. I think the ADM's purpose on the long run is there's many purposes, but the long runs are to increase youth participation and to maintain that participation through adulthood. I think if many of us played soccer, fell in love with soccer, played it as youth, didn't necessarily do it professionally or college, but did it competitively, you maintained it, and then all through your years, as long as you could, let's say to the 50s, 60s, you played soccer. So you at least had some physical activity in your life going on. You never just kind of just let life take you on and get you obese, and therefore there comes diabetes, high cholesterol, high sugar problems, all these issues that come from not a really stagnant lifestyle. And the ADM will be beneficial for the overall country's health, because this will push us to actually move around and do something with our lives. The ADM is going to be a really great project, and it's really going to work out, and I believe in it. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have for this podcast, so I'm just going to leave it on. This is Small Changes, Big Consequences. This is our first podcast, and unfortunately, it won't be our last, so we'll hear back from you. Y'all have a great night.